Hi, everyone. Hope you had a nice Shabbat or a weekend, whatever it is you're involved with. So the subject of this video is Lebanon. We're going to talk about what's going on with them, what's going on with Hezbollah there. Things are very much heating up. While all eyes are still, of course, on what's going on in Iran, this is becoming a major battle front. We're going to get into all the details of that. Before we do that, I just want to remind you once again, please go to Israel365charity.com. There are still rockets being fired at Israel. There are still families having to run to bomb shelters. There are still young mothers with their kids at home and they can't go to work and the kids can't go to school. And all this is still going on. And there are many, many needs. And Israel 365 is well connected on the ground to get money into the hands of the right people and the right charities. So please go to Israel365charity.com. Click on the banner here, Israel is under fire, or scroll down to the current project. The first one there is Israel at War, Help Now. And you could really participate in a positive way in what is going on here. So so thank you. Thank you for doing that. Just take a second, go drop a couple nickels in there. It'll really help us out. Okay, on to the headlines about Lebanon. So this is from today. Hunt and neutralize. IDF strengthens attacks against Hezbollah in Lebanon. Okay, so what is this all about? Here we go. The IDF on Saturday, that's today, expanded its ground operations against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, as well as launching artillery fire into the area, according to military officials. The move comes after IDF Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir, ordered forces to intensify a targeted campaign against members of Hezbollah's Radwan force, following increased militant movement toward the border over the past week. Okay, the Radwan force. The Radwan force is the special forces of Hezbollah, a unit that was built in order to carry out infiltrations into the state of Israel and into civilian areas. But it's a special forces unit. Again, the main purpose of it is to terrorize Israelis, terrorize Israeli civilian areas. And that's who the Radwan or Radwan, it's spelled a couple different ways, forces. You can look them up and you'll find out a lot more about them. Military officials said the artillery barrage was intended to support expanded ground activity against Hezbollah units operating in southern Lebanon. So this is big, expanded ground activity by the IDF into southern Lebanon. Additional Israeli ground forces have been deployed in the area as part of the effort. And I'll tell you, as someone living in Israel, there's been a lot of forces moving north, been a lot of reservists who are being called up to go north. Israel is planning a serious campaign in Lebanon, and according to this article, it's already begun. Zamir instructed forces to strengthen the hunt and neutralize strategy, targeting Radwan force operatives, Hezbollah's elite unit. According to the military, hundreds of fighters were recently observed moving towards southern Lebanon. Okay, and then it says that roughly 400 Hezbollah operatives have been killed by Israelis in recent months, including 100 members of Radwan. Over the past 24 hours, tank transporters and Namer armored personnel carriers have been seen moving towards the Lebanese border as part of preparations for potential large-scale ground maneuver. Potential large-scale ground maneuver, that's what I was just mentioning. In recent weeks, Israel's military intelligence directorate has concentrated efforts on tracking and targeting Radwan force fighters operating in southern Lebanon. Okay. Security officials said the intensified campaign was ordered by the chief of staff to weaken the elite unit. The strategic focus remains on Iran, obviously, and company and battalion combat teams composed of infantry, armor, and engineering forces supported by artillery, surveillance units, and air power have been conducting targeted incursions into areas of southern Lebanon aimed at pushing back Hezbollah activity. Now, the engineering forces, what the combat engineers do for the most part in these, both in Gaza and in South Lebanon, is destroy infrastructure. Okay, and there's a lot of Hezbollah infrastructure in South Lebanon, including a tunnel network. It doesn't appear to be as extensive as what there was in Gaza, but there is a tunnel network there. Right back in, this is a story from 2019 about Hezbollah tunnels. Hezbollah could for years enter Israel, group's leader says, after tunnels found. This is from 2019. This is before the current war. Iran-backed Hezbollah has for years been able to enter Israel, the Lebanese group's leader said on Saturday. This is back in 2019, responding for the first time to Israel's discovery of tunnels dug into the Israeli territory from Lebanon. Okay, Israel unveiled what it called Hezbollah attack tunnels. Okay, and this is, so there is a tunnel network up there in Lebanon as well. And Israel is working to destroy that as part of this invasion, as part of this ground operation. The IDF said Hezbollah systematically positions its military infrastructure within civilian population centers throughout Lebanon. As a result, Israeli forces have issued evacuation instructions to residents in several areas to reduce the risk to civilians during military operations. So this is a very important point about the evacuation notices, because one of the news items that's out there right now about what's going on in Lebanon is this massive number of displaced persons, as some major humanitarian disaster. UN Chief Guterres landed in Beirut on Friday for a wartime visit of solidarity. Right, UN Chief Antonio Guterres has arrived in Beirut for a solidarity visit to Lebanon, where more than 687 people are reported to have been killed since Hezbollah pulled the country into Israel's conflict with Iran on March 2nd. Guterres is expected to raise awareness of the growing humanitarian needs in the country with more than 800,000 people displaced. Okay? And he talks about how the UN is going to spare no effort to bring about some sort of peaceful resolution. But understand, the reason that there's so many displaced people is because Hezbollah, like Hamas, this is just what they do. They operate out of civilian areas. They specifically put all their headquarters and their equipment and their whole apparatus, they build it intertwined with the civilian population. And therefore, Israel wants to minimize civilian casualties, so it is issuing notices to people in certain neighborhoods and certain buildings of what's going to be struck, and that's causing mass evacuations from South Lebanon. That's why that happens, okay? Lebanese President Joseph Aoun calls for new ceasefire with Israel, vows to disarm Hezbollah. Oh, please, thank you so much for vowing to disarm Hezbollah. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun called for the implementation of a new ceasefire agreement with Israel, demanding a complete halt to all Israeli action against Hezbollah during a virtual meeting with the President of the European Council, Antonio Costa, and the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, on Monday. Wow, that's great. This is a few days ago. He called for a new ceasefire with Israel, and he vowed to disarm Hezbollah. He called for an immediate cessation. Look what he says here. He stated that after receiving support, the Lebanese military will disarm Hezbollah and confiscate all the weapons. Now, what's going on here? The Lebanese government committed itself over a year ago to disarm Hezbollah by the end of 2025, and they did not. And that's why the Israelis lost patience and basically said, okay, we're going to take care of it. But they didn't just go in. On March 2nd, or March 3rd, whatever, it was right, I think the second or third day of the war, Hezbollah started firing rockets at Israel. They opened up a war front against Israel. So Aoun criticized them also. He decried Hezbollah's attack on Israel as an attempt to lure the IDF into conflict with Lebanon. Okay, Aoun lamented the impact of Israel's retaliation against Hezbollah. He said Hezbollah's strikes were a trap and an almost overt ambush for Lebanon and the Lebanese state and the Lebanese people. Right? He additionally expressed solidarity and support for Middle Eastern nations that have been attacked by Iran. But look, he didn't disarm Hezbollah, and Hezbollah started launching rockets at Israel. So Israel's retaliating, but also giving warnings to people to evacuate, because Lebanon has no ability to disarm Hezbollah. That's the issue. I've said this before, Lebanon has been occupied Iranian territory for decades. Hezbollah is an arm of Iran. They're not a proxy of Iran. Hamas, Houthis, those are proxies. They get money and weapons from Iran, but they're not wholly owned and operated by Iran. Hezbollah is owned and operated by Iran. They are an extension of the Iranian government. It's another front in the war against Iran, fighting against Hezbollah. That's how we need to understand it. Okay. Lebanon's bid for historic negotiations with Israel rebuffed as U.S. says opportunity has passed. Okay, so this is right after that lovely attempt by Joseph Aoun to get negotiations with Israel. The Israelis basically said no thanks. Beirut said President Joseph Aoun initiated direct ceasefire talks with Israel and even weighed normalization. We'll get to that in a moment. But his office says Israel never responded, as sources say the U.S. and Israel distrust Lebanon's government for failing to confront Hezbollah. Reuters reported Friday that sources in Lebanon and elsewhere say Israel has effectively rejected a historic proposal from the government in Beirut to open direct negotiations between the two countries. Lebanese officials had not ruled out the possibility that such talks could eventually lead to normalization of relations. According to the sources, U.S. officials, frustrated that the Lebanese government failed to meet its commitment to disarm Hezbollah, also did not adopt the proposal, that the U.S. didn't adopt it. Instead, they conveyed the message that Lebanon's window of opportunity closed at the end of 2025, right? By which time, or the year that Beirut had pledged to complete the group's disarmament, or at least make substantial progress towards it. They did not. So you see what's going on here. They had pledged to disarm Hezbollah. They did not. Hezbollah then attacks Israel in this war. Israel says, okay, we've had enough. You never disarmed them. We're going to take care of this ourselves. So Israel starts bombing Hezbollah in retaliation for Hezbollah launching salvos of rockets at Israel to support the Iranian regime, who they work for. Israel's retaliating against Hezbollah and telling people to evacuate. And now Joseph Aoun is like, no, let's have a ceasefire. You put the different stories I just read to you together. He's like, let's have a ceasefire, and this time we'll actually disarm them. Okay, and we'll even normalize with Israel, as though Israel cares at this point. Like, what does Israel have to gain by normalization with Lebanon? Yeah, it would be nice. We had a peaceful neighbor up there, but we will if we get rid of Hezbollah, and we won't if we don't get rid of Hezbollah. As though Lebanon is like, yeah, we'll decide whether or not we're willing to recognize Israel's right to exist and normalize relations. Look, guys, the Middle East is moving on. Israel's now fighting almost alongside UAE and Saudi Arabia. I mean, like there's this whole, Israel's still the bad guy thing. It's just not going to work anymore. Okay. And Lebanon is still stuck in that mindset. And, they want the bombing to stop, but they don't really have sovereignty. And that's why Israel's saying, we're not interested. Israel rebuffed this. We're not interested in these conversations anymore. We are interested in getting rid of Hezbollah. To say now, after so many failed attempts, that you're going to finally disarm them, we're just not so interested. One of the things you're going to hear about is Resolution 1701. Okay, so back in 2006, there's some important background information here. Back in 2006, there was a resolution to end the Second Lebanon War called Resolution 1701. And that was intended to make South Lebanon devoid of all troops, okay, south of the Litani River. Okay, so here's the border between Israel and Lebanon, and here's the Litani River. If you follow this story, you hear about that a lot. There's it's about 30 kilometers, about 19 miles between the border of Israel and the Litani River here. It's obviously much closer over here. And according to UN Security Council Resolution 1701, this entire area is supposed to be free of all military presence other than the United Nations and the Lebanese army, meaning no Hezbollah allowed. Well, actually, here's what it says. Security arrangements to prevent the resumption of hostilities, including the establishment between the Blue Line and the Litani River of an area, meaning the Israeli border on the Litani River, of an area free of any armed personnel, assets, and weapons other than those of the government of Lebanon and UNIFIL. It also called for full implementation of the relevant provisions of the Taif Accords. That's an earlier accord that requires, from 2004, that requires the disarmament of all armed groups in Lebanon, so that pursuant to the Lebanese cabinet decision of July 2006, there will be no weapons or authority in Lebanon other than that of the Lebanese state. That's Security Council Resolution 1701. This has never, ever been implemented. Almost immediately after it was signed, the UN said, well, it's not our job to disarm them. The Lebanese government has to do it. And of course, the Lebanese government's not going to do it. And no one ended up disarming Hezbollah. So Hezbollah started, building themselves up here with missiles and building those tunnels that I told you about. And this has been going on for years and years and years. And that's what Israel's finally trying to solve with this offensive. That's why they're going with such an extensive ground force now, meaning the last round of this game was 2025, when the Lebanese government, under this new, more moderate leadership of Joseph Aoun, said, we are finally going to disarm Hezbollah, and they did not. So now you have France stepping into things. U.S.-France work on direct ceasefire talks between Israel and Lebanon. The United States and France are seeking to arrange direct talks soon between representatives of Israel and the Lebanese government in an effort to reach a ceasefire. The initiative aims to halt the escalation and prevent a possible Israeli ground operation in southern Lebanon. This is a couple days old, and that is not going to work. Okay, and meanwhile, the French have stepped in. French ceasefire plan for Lebanon said to require Lebanese recognition of Israel. And this is from today. Okay, this is brand new. France has drawn up a proposal to end the fighting in Lebanon between Israel and Hezbollah that would require Lebanon's government to recognize Israel, Axios reports. Citing sources familiar with the matter, the news site says Lebanon's government has accepted the proposal as a basis for talks, while the U.S. and Israel are both reviewing it. According to the report, the French plan calls for Jerusalem and Beirut to hold direct talks on a political declaration that the sides would agree upon within a month. The sources quoted by Axios say France wants the negotiations to be held in Paris. Okay, senior diplomats, they want the photo ops. Outlining the plan, the report says that along with recognizing Israel, Lebanon would vow to respect its sovereignty and territorial integrity, while both countries would also stress their commitment to the UN Security Council resolution ending the 2006 Lebanon war and the ceasefire deal, that's 1701 that I just told you about, and the ceasefire deal reached in November 2024 after more than a year of fighting between Hezbollah and Israel. And it was after that ceasefire deal that the Lebanese government, part of that deal was that the Lebanese government was going to disarm Hezbollah. Lebanon's government would also reportedly be committed under the plan to preventing any attacks on Israel from Lebanese territory and to disarming Hezbollah and banning the terror group's military activity. Meanwhile, Israeli forces would withdraw from areas captured during the current war within a month, while the Lebanese army redeploys in southern Lebanon with UNIFIL and a group of countries selected by the UN Security Council tasked with verifying Hezbollah is disarmed. The report says that Lebanon will be required to declare its willingness to hold talks with Israel on a permanent non-aggression pact, with an agreement ending the formal state of war between the countries since the Jewish state's founding in 1948 to be signed in 2 months. And then Israel would pull out. Okay, look, the problem is this. The Lebanese do not have the ability to disarm Hezbollah. They don't. They don't have that ability. Israel does. They've been saying for years and years and years. This goes back to 2006, to 1701, where the Lebanese government is supposed to disarm Hezbollah. They don't. It goes on for more and more years. It goes on throughout this war. It goes on in 2025. No disarming of Hezbollah, and Hezbollah attacking Israel, firing missiles at Israeli towns. In the early part of this war after October 7th, you might remember there were hundreds of thousands of Israelis from northern towns who had to evacuate because Hezbollah started firing rockets at Israel. Okay? This is the same thing as what's going on in Gaza for the last while, where the Trump plan for Gaza calls for Hamas to be disarmed, but it doesn't say who's going to do it, and no one wants to do it, and no one's really capable of doing it other than the Israelis, but no one wants the Israelis to go in and do it. We have the same thing going on up north in Lebanon. And as I mentioned, you got Guterres running around now. And Guterres, of course, is an old friend of Yasser Arafat's here. You know, he hung out with him a lot, and he even visited Ramallah in 2017 and laid a wreath at this monument honoring this memorial site honoring Yasser Arafat. So he's no friend of Israel. But anyway, bottom line is this. Let's just sum this up and bring this video to a close. And that is that Lebanon is heating up big time. The Israelis are not playing games anymore, and are not going to accept anything less than the destruction of Hezbollah. And this is not a separate war from what's going on in Iran. That's a very important point. Very important point, and I keep emphasizing this. Hezbollah is Iran. Hezbollah is Iran. They're not a Lebanese militia. Okay, they're an Iranian. They're an arm of the IRGC. They're an arm of the regime in Tehran. And while Israel is at war with Iran in Iran, it's also at war with Iran in Lebanon. And I'll also add in that with the Middle East changing and the different factions that are developing in the Middle East, with the, God willing, the Iranian regime falls. But when this war is over, there's all kinds of new coalitions that are being formed. And the Lebanese, Lebanon was such a mess, they need to decide whose side they're on. And if they choose wisely, they will allow Israel to go in and destroy Hezbollah and get rid of them and no longer pose a threat to Israel. And then they can have lots of economic benefits of that relationship. They could live peacefully. They can go back to being the kind of multicultural society that they once were. Although, honestly, the modern state of Lebanon has pretty much always been in a state of civil war. So it's a bit of a mess. It's quite the failed state. But we'll see where it goes. But just again, the big headline is that Israel is not about to slow down and not about to go to some sort of peaceful negotiation. Israel is moving troops in to Lebanon to finally get rid of Hezbollah completely. All right. God bless. Thanks for watching. And please like and share and do all that great stuff. Thanks for growing the channel. Much appreciated. God bless.